Tonight we're going to be running Wraith the Oblivion 20th Anniversary Edition. This is one of our prologue episodes. We have 4 players in this chronicle, 2 of whom are here today to role-play out some of their mortal comings and goings, some of the moments that were important to them before their death. And in Wraith, all characters die. Death is a very important part of Wraith because the majority of characters you will encounter, the majority of characters you will play, are indeed dead. It is a game in which you play ghosts, individuals who are clinging to the world of the living through their fetters, their passions, whilst trying to forge a new life for themselves in the land of the dead. Our story is set in East Berlin in the 1980s, just prior to the fall of the wall. Some of you viewers may be familiar with the fact I've run a game set in Berlin before, and this wasn't my suggestion. That was for Vampire the Masquerade. It was at the same time period. But one of the players suggested East Berlin. I thought, well, I've got resources on Berlin, so let's revisit it. But let's revisit it this time on the side of the underworld, which we will get to once our characters become the departed. Our 2 players for the first of our prologue episodes are Marc and Vasilis, and I will allow them to introduce their characters in brief before we start the roleplay, just so you can get acquainted with who they're playing, at least who they're playing while alive. So, Marc, take it away. Who is your character?
My character is Gunther Bossengeist, and he belongs to a regiment that depends not from the armed forces of what is known as East Germany, the German Democratic Republic, but as part of the Stasi, which would be the Ministry of State Security. He's not specifically a spy or an agent. He's part of the regiment, but as a part of the Stasi, he may get asked to be involved in any tasks that they require. It's not part of the military. It's a military regiment, but it's not part of the main forces. Well, he's a loyal subject of the state, and well, he will try to do his job to the best of his ability. He's a patriotic kind of person.
As arguably a nationalistic character, if not patriotic, how does Gunther feel about the almost inevitable, well, it is inevitable, but inevitable feeling collapse of the East? Everyone's feeling it, from Russia through to Germany, that the Soviet Union is on its last legs. How does an individual fairly well placed in the Stasi feel about that situation?
Well, in East Germany, in the last day, there were most people, even the government, even the president, Honecker, they lived kind of an illusion that it would continue no matter what, even to the end. So he might still believe that no matter what happens, it will not end. Not really. It cannot end. And after the end, my idea is also to represent people that used to live there that still consider themselves part of the German Democratic Republic. And even if the nation itself does not exist anymore, they still consider themselves of that nationality. So I'm trying to play out kind of like what in real life I know people from there tend to see it.
And does Gunther have any family or close friends?
He has his father died, of natural causes. His father and mother both worked for the state. They were considered of a good standing, loyal. That's how he got recruited in the regiment. And he has two sisters. One is a teacher, and the other one works for. Is an architect, works in the basically building and inspecting building blocks. The communist type of building blocks that are all over East Germany. And as for friends, well, he has a few friends from work. There was not a lot of fun things to do in communist societies. Most people actually from work, and they do meetings and all sort of activities with people from their factory, wherever they were working.
Yeah, things like card games, card games, listening to the radio, that kind of thing. Listening to music together.
Yeah, may organize balls and
lots of heavy drinking.
Heavy drinking, yeah, or I heard they would very often go out to the many facilities for picnics and sports and stuff like that.
Okay, that's excellent. I've got a good picture of who your character is now. And how about Vasilis? So what can you tell us about your character?
So my character's name is Jonas. His full name is Jonas Hermdi. He's a very rare ethnicity after World War II in Germany. He's of Hebrew origins. There were very few Jews that managed to stay in what is today called Germany. The way they did it was that they were always communist, even before the World War II, before the Nazi party came to power. And during the Holocaust, they had to flee for their lives with their whole family. They were once, Jonas's family was one of the few families that managed to do it early on. They fled towards Russia and Moscow, and they found refuge there during the war, where they became more indebted sentimentally with communism, because they saw it as their savior. They lost a lot of relatives, as every Jew lost during the Holocaust, and their family were one of the few that, due to their ideological belief and faith in communism, decided to return to their original, not the original houses, but to the houses that were assigned to them from the Communist Party. And as a matter of fact, they're now living over there for the few years that the German Democratic Republic has been established. And Jonas has a bigger brother who has left for Berlin and is studying to become a mechanic, an engineer. And while he still has to stay, he's the second child of his family, and he has to stay in his hometown, help his father at the factory, where they both work every day. And after that, he has to go back and help his mother with housework. In his household also live his younger sister and his baby brother, and with them also live his mother's sister, who lost her whole family in the Holocaust and is now very traumatized and essentially lives with them because she has nowhere else to go. He has very little time to spend on himself, and very few things to do as entertainment, as already mentioned. The only outlet he has is sports. So he's a casual boxer. He's doing boxing in his hometown, and he's very good for the amateur league that exists, which is not professional and very much local in the outskirts of Berlin, but not on the professional level. Definitely not in the whole Soviet Union level. And because he tries to earn a little bit of more money, he participates in the betting side of boxing as well. Does a few boxing matches with money.
Perfect. And what kind of ages are we looking at for our characters? What age is Jonas?
He's 24.
24. And Marc, what age is Gunther?
He's about 30, early 30s.
Okay.
I have to give a specific age?
No.
I don't know what year specifically we are in.
Early 30s is absolutely fine. It's more to get a picture of the character. And on that note, is there anything of the character's physical traits that you would want to describe at this early stage? How does Gunther appear?
Well, unlike me, he's lean. There's not so much rich food in the Soviet bloc. He's lean, has short hair, not too short. It's not a military cut like in the West. The hair is very short. It's okay. It's a clear cut kind of. And he's a typical person from Berlin.
Looks down a lot, walks around with his arms folded, likes to keep himself to himself when he's not watching people, basically.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate.
I'm going from the Northern European stereotype at this point, where a lot of Northern Europeans, I was remarking to someone earlier today, do seem to have the downcast, closed off expression until you get to know them. That is a stereotype, but it's quite prevalent in Germany, Denmark, and further north. And how about Jonas? What's his appearance? This strapping young man, or maybe he's quite the opposite?
He's relatively well built due to constant manual labor and a lot of exercise that he does, even though he's not very well fed, so he doesn't stand out as very muscular or anything, but relatively strong. Constantly unshaven, his hair are curly and very unattended, and he never wears anything that is expensive or of good quality. And he does not. It's obvious that he is not invested in anything that is material possession. He doesn't believe in that things.
So my last question regarding Jonas is, you've mentioned that he lives in his hometown with his family, and I think you said that his older brother went to Berlin to study. Is that right, or that he left Berlin to study? Where do you see Jonas's hometown?
I was thinking that his hometown is a little bit outside Berlin, and not in the center of it. So his brother actually went and lives in the center of German Democratic Republic in Berlin.
Okay. I was thinking that your family could live in Bautzen, which is in East Germany. It's a medieval town, but it's also a large prison town under the DDR. So I think it's the kind of place, because it's got an old quality to it. It's a good kind of place for a family, or especially a young man, to maybe feel a little trapped, especially if his older brother is getting to visit Berlin and live there, a city where far more opportunities abound.
Yep, I like this idea.
Okay. And yes, meanwhile, we have Gunther, who is based in Berlin. Now, just because our characters start off separate doesn't mean that they will end up that way. One way we will be playing this prologue is through snapshots of time. Our characters are going to be experiencing a few flashbacks, essentially, important moments in their life. Some of them will be where they met each other. Some of them will be just completely distinct moments. So while we're picturing our characters of a certain age and in a certain place, we may jump around a little to help define these characters. One thing you might notice as a viewer is in this session we are rolling no dice. We don't even have character sheets yet. In Wraith the Oblivion, it's quite important to help define the character based on action and behaviour, and then based on that we can translate it into dots on a character sheet after the character passes on or meets their maker or what have you. So, any questions from the players before we begin? Nope. In that case, we're going to be starting our chronicle with Gunther in East Berlin. It's a warm Saturday night. I'm going to say that the year is 1986. East Berlin is as East Berlin often is. The stereotype is often true. It's grey, it's brutal, it's monumental, and the people there, they keep themselves. They're hard workers, they're honest people, at least that's the image they want to project, and providing they stay that way, Gunther remains a happy man. On the Saturday evening, Gunther isn't expected to work. Indeed, he is at the bar with one of his colleagues, a friend of his and workmate of the Polizei by the name of Hans Müller. Hans recently got his papers. He is to retire from the Polizei, from the police force. And while Hans has never served in the secret police, the Stasi, or anything related to intelligence gathering, he and Gunther have known each other for some time. They exchange information from time to time. They help each other out. Where Gunther deals with things behind the scenes, Hans deals with it all up front and above board. And so they're sat at the bar drinking their schnapps. And the bar is mostly empty. There's a live band playing in a corner, but no one's really paying much attention. He hammers the glass. Gunther, what a life it has been. I was hoping more would come to my retirement party, but look. Am I really so dislikable?
I wouldn't say that. Actually, I don't know, probably they're with their families. I don't know. I don't find you dislikable at all.
So what about you? Families, you're always talking about families and how we should be spending more time with them. I never see you with a girl on your arm or something else. I mean, I've followed you all the way through your training, you know me. Worked together for years, and you always seem to live a pretty private life.
Well, I don't know. There's always something else to be doing, something at work. And well, I enjoy time with my family on weekends, whenever I can meet with them. And well, I have my friends, but that's just as it happens. If you don't put a lot of energy in finding a mate, they don't just come to you. And I guess I was just busy with something else.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, you're right there. I mean, my wife and I have had our ups and downs, probably more downs than ups. This job has kept me away from home more often than I'd like to consider, and certainly she reminds me of the fact. 2 more schnapps, please. It'll be nice to spend more time with her, but I'm gotta be honest, I'm fucking terrified. It's not like we take holidays together. It's not like we spend much time together at all. I've had the last 40 years of service. 40 years.
Why didn't you take holidays? You know we get them. There's plenty of places we can go.
I always thought that if we saved and saved and saved, we could do something luxurious come retirement, If we, instead of just cashing our coupons and taking a trip down to the Black Sea, if we just kept saving and maybe you could do a round the world tour when all of this was over. I'm looking at what we've got in the bank. I doubt we'd be able to get to the edge of Europe with that. It's not like I've ever been particularly good at investing, and I've always liked to put a bit of cash down on the horses. That's not always paid my way. That's not always done well for me. That's the conversation I'm not looking forward to having with her when she presents me with a packed bag and says, "So, this is what I've been waiting for all my life. When do we get on board the cruise?" Only to find, well, we'll be traveling budget if we're traveling at all. Still, I don't know. I hear there's some nice ships that sail around the Baltic, at least, if you can stand the cold.
Well, you know that outside or in the West, our money is worthless, but when it comes to vacation options, I'm sure you'll find something. They make they're not that expensive for us workers. You will be able to go somewhere interesting. The Soviet Union is great. It's very large. You can travel a lot alone. Now, I think with your retirement, you could afford, I mean, not just live traveling, but a good vacation here and there.
Yeah, well, you know what she sees on the in the cinema. She sees movies that present the American coastline, the Caribbean, taking a trip down to sunny North Africa. She doesn't want to take a trip to the Crimea or head out to Mongolia. She's bought into it all, hook, line, and sinker. And sometimes I wonder, is this what I worked for my entire life? I'm sorry, I'm being a real downer. What about you? What's how's work going for you? I hear you've been placed pretty well in your little grouping.
Yeah, but times are hard lately, so we have a lot of work. The bosses are crazy. and they put pressure on us. But we do what we can. I'm looking forward to my next vacations. I really need a rest.
No, I've only got one real regret from all this. It's something you hear a lot of police officers complain about. There's always that one last case, the one that got away. And I've got more than one that got away. Gunther. God, the smuggling rings I failed to crack down on, the black marketeers. So many of them. Sometimes I wonder if there's more of them than there are legitimate businesses over here. But the one, 10 years ago, this was before your time, of course. There was a series of killings, grisly murders, ranged throughout East Berlin. But they were all connected. I was sure they were all connected. And you know how the chiefs get, the commissioners. They don't like that kind of news. They don't like the papers to tell stories, or even word to travel on the street about a serial killer, as they call them now in America. The idea of someone capable of chopping down dozens of individuals in the same manner, the same kind of target every single time, and somehow completely able to evade police scrutiny. I hear they've had a couple of nasty ones in Russia, with words starting to get out. But our one never made it to the headlines. There was no public warning to start walking in groups. I felt like I was so close to catching this one. Felt like I built a decent profile. And and I shouldn't be telling you this, but maybe the schnapps has gone to my head, or maybe it's because it's my final day. I'm gonna say it. I'm pretty damn certain this killer, was a state official, was protected. Because whenever I got close, everything just got pulled away, files got locked, or just vanished from my office. And the commissioner wouldn't say a word about it, just kept saying, follow the leads, follow the leads. I tried to follow the leads, but those leads just kept getting scrubbed. One time I arrived at the crime scene, it had already been cleaned. Someone had been there before. There's no way that wasn't done by amateurs. And I know our technology, our methods are antiquated compared to some police departments across Europe, but this was done thoroughly. That's when I knew that there was a murderer who was being protected. By my count, this killer killed 14 young men in East Berlin, cut them up, mutilated them in ways I still picture every single time I try and get to sleep. And then, gone, vanished. 10 years ago. And so, a lot of the other officers, they said, oh, killer must have died. Ah, killer must have moved to a different city. Or maybe the killer jumped the wall and now he's the West's problem. I don't know. I don't know enough about these kinds of killers to know whether they can just stop, whether they can just turn around and stop what they're doing.
Well, I never heard of anything like this. Maybe someone put a stop to it.
It's possible. Anything is possible. All I know is this killer was never identified. And that haunts me. Because I came close so many times and the killings continued. In a part of my mind, some of those deaths are on my hands because I didn't stop him early enough.
Well,
So I'm going to ask you a favor. I'm going to ask you a favor, Gunther, and I'll accept if you say no. You're not obliged to do what I'm saying. He pulls a file out from his jacket. Everything I've collected on this guy, and I'm pretty sure it's a man. Everything I've collected is in this file. And I'm giving it to you, not because I expect you to start following up on murders 10 years old, but because if there's a traitor to the state who's been doing this to his own people, it should be handled by your agency. And if your agency is party to covering it up as well, you need to start asking questions. You need to start getting worried. So I'm sorry to dump this on you, but if you don't want to read this file, just burn it, because I don't want it in my house. Don't want anything to do with it anymore. My time with this over my head is done.
Okay. Tell you what, I'm not in the liberty to choose my cases or anything like that. I don't even have cases really. It's not how I work exactly my department, you know. I'm a paratrooper mostly. I operate mostly like in the army. But I'll get rid of it for you.
No, that's why I'm asking you. This isn't... I'm not expecting you to become a PI, a detective. If you look at the evidence, I followed this up as far as the army. I think this guy is a liaison, or he's a retired officer, or these, and you're going to... It could mean nothing, it could mean everything. What the doctors said, based on the wounds caused, and again, could mean nothing. They were caused by a bayonet. Someone was, I doubt it was attached to a rifle. Someone was using a bayonet as a dagger, jamming it in the guts of young men and cutting. Well, you can look at the photos of the shapes they were cutting. But there's more to it than that. It's not just the method by which he killed. There was enough bodies near barracks, enough bodies connected, I think. I'm telling you that one of your own is rotten, or was rotten. If you can do any investigation into this on my behalf, off the books, don't tell your superiors about it straight away, not until you've got something solid. I will be eternally in your debt.
Well, like I said, I will get rid of this for you. Just don't worry about it anymore. Enjoy your retirement.
Do you want a beer to wash down this schnapps?
Yeah, a pilsner will be nice.
2 beers. The rest of the evening passes by, the warmth of the evening creating a humid haze outside on the street. By the time the both of you part with a hug, kiss on both cheeks and shake of hands, you're not really sure whether you're going to see Mula again. It almost feels like he's saying goodbye forever. But you don't stop him. You don't call him. You just watch him walk away toward the train station. And at least for the time being, out of your life, leaving you only with a unsolved murder case in your hands. Jonas, now.
Yes.
It is 1986, and a young Jonas Hemlin is apprenticing for his father, working in a ceramics factory. And it's thoroughly uninspiring work. It's entirely manual labor. Very little automation at this time. So there's a certain amount of artisan craft to it, but it's not necessarily where Jonas wants to be. The problem is in this country, there isn't much opportunity to do something that you're not slotted into. This is the position that was created for you, based on your father, and probably based on his father. You create, or design, create, and ship toilets, sinks, and other such ceramic goods in your small town. You're getting the hang of it, Jonas. You're getting there. That bathtub, that matches the specifications exactly that was ordered.
Thank you, Father.
But I can see your heart's not in it. Look at all these people working in this factory. None of their hearts are in it. My heart isn't in it. But the trick is to not show it. You're not going to go anywhere if you constantly look miserable, if you're checking the clock every single time you complete a fixture or fitting, if you're waiting for the lunch bell. I mean, you got to find things to look forward to. You've got to take the small joys out of what we do. This bath, someday, probably someday soon, a beautiful woman is going to be laying in this bath in hot water. She is going to be luxuriating, relaxing, and there may be a part of my mind that wonders, I wonder whose strong hands built this bathtub. And maybe if God is smiling, she'll put your face in her mind.
Well, I do hope that this will be Francisca, because if that is Francisca, I surely hope she's thinking of me.
Jonas, this bath is going to a stately house. This is going to be going out to the countryside. This isn't going to end up in some house in town or even in Dresden or Berlin. This kind of custom design. This goes to a mansion. People high up in the state.
Aren't we all equal, Father? What kind of high state are you talking about?
Well, of course we are. We're all equal. We are all equal. We have a lot to be thankful for with the equality that we've been offered. Never forget that. But that doesn't mean that the people who work the hardest, the people that really bend over backwards to make sure that everything is fair for the rest of us, they don't deserve the occasional bonus. At least that's what I tell myself, is what I tell myself to stop myself from going mad thinking, who am I building these perfectly pristine toilets for? When I look at the state of our toilet and I look at these toilets, we still have a hole in the back garden. This, yeah, it would be nice to have indoor plumbing, but that's, you know, your older brother. Where he's staying in Berlin right now, hot running water throughout the building. It's an engineering marvel, he says. He doesn't know, you know, so many cities to have that. Just because we live in an old city, we have to live in an old style. Yeah, da, da, da. Your father goes on like this. He likes to take his flights of fancy. The foreman blows his whistle, taps his watch. You're on the clock, gentlemen.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
of course.
yes, sir. Speaking of your brother, weren't you going to go to meet him sometime soon?
I don't know. You know, I'm keeping busy. I just got my new bicycle. I think I'm meant to do a couple of fights because it's summer. So I don't know.
Who ever heard of a Jewish boxer? Really?
Why are you saying this? I'm so good. I'm everybody likes me. Come on.
Look, I'm not saying you're not good. I've not seen you fight, but you keep coming back with more money than you went with. So something must be working.
Exactly.
All I know is from what little I know about your noble sport. There aren't many chosen people fighting in the ring.
I don't want to be chosen. I just wanna have my fun. And listen, I wrote him a letter a month ago, and I asked him if he knows of any good fight that's gonna take place in the capital. I'm just gonna go there.
So you're going to try and find a gymnasium or even an arena where they're just looking for people to walk up, where they're looking for boxers from Bautzen to just walk on in and say, hey, I've got a pair of fists, let me fight. You'd be
Yeah,
better off going somewhere with a circus.
father, you keep on patronizing me. Come on. Remember David and Goliath. Come on.
I'm not saying you're not built for it. You're a strong boy. You know, you've got big, strong arms, big fists. I don't know much about your jaw, but when I say you should consider the circus, I'm not joking. They make a lot of money. They tour around. They set up the boxing ring. They let anyone walk up and fight one of their strong men. Maybe you should try that. Maybe you should try that. Earn a bit of local recognition. Circus coming to town soon. Give it a try. Give it a try. Be paraded around the town as the man that knocked down the giant. If you want to be David and you want him to be Goliath, going to Berlin for a fight, you're going to be getting in all kinds of trouble. You don't know. You're an amateur. These people will be professionals if they're fighting in the capital. Take it from me.
Listen, I'll think about it. I'll think about it.
The circus, my boy. That's what you want. And if that works out, then we can talk Berlin. But I want you to, if you're going to Berlin to meet your brother, you don't want to be meeting him with a broken nose and a black eye and a swollen ear. You want to be seeing him. You want him to be able to show you off. to his friends, to his girlfriends, say, this is my good-looking younger brother, not this is my younger brother, the pugilist.
If there's any circus coming, I'll consider it. I don't know. Is there?
Well, I'll put in a good word. I'll put in a good word with the foreman. Soon, very soon, I think we are set dispatching an entire truckload of these toilets to Berlin. Some state officials, rather, I think they are. I think it's something military. Maybe it's the high-ranking officers. They're getting these to replace some old shoddy workmanship that they've had in since, I think, the 1930s. You can go up. Someone's going to need to install them. And, at this at the Heinz factory, we are renowned for, we design, we craft, we deliver, we install. You could make two reasons for going to Berlin. You go to Berlin, you see your brother, you also earn a bit of favor with the company. Maybe get to rub shoulders with well-to-do people.
Definitely. I'll ask mother to iron my good shirt maybe, so I don't know, maybe I can go out all night if I have time. I don't know if I'm gonna have the money. I'll think about it.
Don't worry about your mother. Your brother, your brother must be the same size as you. He'll have shirts. He lives in Berlin.
Oh,
everyone in Berlin has a shirt.
Oh, great.
Yeah, you'll be all right. You'll be all right, my boy. Just if you end up coming back here, you've not won a pair of golden gloves, you don't have a belt around your waist, that's fine. This is good, honest work. It may be boring, but it's keeping you out of trouble. You know all the prisons around here.
Yes, father.
You know all the prisons around here. Not one member of my family is in one of those prisons.
Of course.
And these fights, you know how criminals like to influence these fights. I don't want to hear. There's one thing I don't mind you fighting, but I don't want to find out that I've got to explain to your mother that you took cash from some criminal enterprise to take a dive, to hit someone a little too hard. I've heard about it happening.
No, not in my league. Don't worry, I'm not doing this stuff.
If you're gonna fight straight up.
Remember, I'm David.
You're David. You're my David. You're my boy. All right, let's get finished with this.
Of course.
What is Jonas's feeling toward the factory and the work that he does? Does he take pride in it?
Well, he grew up in a society where working is very much the norm. He doesn't feel like this is onerous or boring or ungracious. He feels that this is like part of normal life. All of his friends do it. He hasn't met anybody who didn't have to do it. Even his brother was doing it while he was still in this town. So he has enough energy from his youth to feel like, okay, that's work. We're just gonna churn through it and then just go have our life afterwards. And whatever little time he has, he gets to smoke a cigarette with his friends, have a beer, go around with a bicycle. That's enough for him. He doesn't care. He's very deeply ingrained in this society.
Very good. Okay, we're going to pass back to Gunther now. It's been around 3 months since you last saw Muller. You've not been in touch with him, you've had no contact, and frankly, work has kept you busy. As much as you hate to have to deal with it, it is a part of your job to suppress rebellion, suppress workers' actions sometimes, especially if they threaten public property, and public interests. And there's been an increasing amount of that in Berlin recently. No one's really sure of the cause, or at least, again, state-controlled news isn't talking about it. And that generally leads to people believing that the cause is the state, that someone's being taxed a little too highly, or someone has had property relinquished from them, all in the name of the state. And for the most part, these things are done to promote the equality, the egalitarianism of communist East Berlin. If someone ends up with too much, the spoils need to be divided. It's a way of keeping society fair. When this happens to a popular person, when it happens to an anxious working class, sometimes people speak up. When no one has had an increase in their pay for close to 5 years, they get rambunctious. And that's when members of your regiment are often called in to suppress. That's what you're on your way back from having done. Small protest in the street. You had to keep people away from the buildings. You had to keep an eye out for agitators. And there were a few that caught your eye. Individuals who were stirring the pot. You can go back with the fellow members of your regiment back to barracks for a debrief. Or you are given the option. We are looking for a dozen men to remain on the streets tonight. Volunteers preferred.
I don't think I'm going to volunteer after.
That's absolutely fine. You head back to barracks with the majority of the rest of your regiment, where people are talking about the day's activities, the revolt that had to be quelled. It wasn't anything major. It wasn't like it was going to topple a government, but it was a nuisance. And most people who serve in your regiment are, like you, nationalists. They believe in the cause. They believe in their role. Certainly, this isn't a job you would take up just for the pay. But sometimes these outbursts from citizens seem a little too entitled. Where do they get off? They're putting you out. Yes, it's good to have work, but there are things you would rather be doing than linking arms with fellow soldiers and keeping the streets safe from youthful agitators. Most of them are students anyway.
Perhaps when I was younger, in my 20s, I would volunteer, but now I'm gonna let it to the new guys to do that.
Very well. Back in the barracks, one of your compatriots, Sergeant Otto Meyer.
Unteroffizier.
Salute. Claps you on the shoulder. We're signing off for the day. Gunther, did you hear the news? I'm guessing you didn't.
No, what news?
Your friend from the police. What was his name? Mueller, yes. I heard news down from on high. He was found dead in his apartment a week or so ago. I thought you should know. I'm very sorry because I remember you saying at one point that you were close, but you hadn't mentioned him much recently.
But how did he die?
I don't have that information. All I know is that he was found dead, and I think, unfortunately, you've missed the funeral. Word only just reached me this morning.
Strange. Well,
I hear he was in his 60s, so it's not a bad age to reach, especially when you've been serving in the police for so long. He was offered retirement time and time again and kept hanging on, that's what they say. So they gave him a decent funeral, I think, or so I've heard. A few turnouts for important figures. Yeah, I guess his days of service are over.
maybe I should go visit his wife, his family, see how they are doing.
Yeah, sure, you can take a leave to do that. It's considered a personal, a personal need. So if you need to take time out of your day tomorrow to do that, that's fine. Or of course, if you feel it's more appropriate to do so this evening, you feel free and leave the grounds. Just ensure you return before lockup.
I guess I just go by tonight.
Gunther, I do have one question for you. And this may sound odd, did Mueller give you anything?
Actually, yes. He gave me some papers. He said he didn't want to have him in his house. I told him to get rid of him, and I did.
Do you remember what those papers were regarding?
Apparently some unsolved murders. I didn't even want to look at the pictures or anything.
You're being a little vague. What were they concerning, officer?
Well, murders. Well, I didn't read it. So what he told me was apparently some serial killings, several murders done by the same killer. I never heard of those.
They happen, I understand, but they're nothing to do with us. Nothing to do with what we do. Bosengeist. Mm-hmm. You were right to destroy those papers. Yes, you were right to destroy those papers. You're discharged. I have a report to file based on today's activities. I'm sure you can understand. Please pass on my regards and sympathies to the wife of Hauptmann Mueller.
I'll be sure to do so.
He goes away. He's acting very strange. The sergeant is usually pretty damn confident, has to be, it's based on his position. But his entire approach is raising your suspicions.
Okay, so I go to my apartment. I actually haven't got rid of it. But what I'm going to do is take a quick look through it and then get rid of it for good. But at least I want to know what the hell it was about.
It matches up to what Hans told you the last time you saw him. There were a series of vicious attacks, 14 confirmed and potentially 19 in total. 14 deaths, at the very least, that were ascribed by Mueller to the same killer. These occurred around East Berlin from the late 1970s. From the early 1970s to the late 1970s. And followed a pattern of attacking young men, generally between the ages of 15 and 25. The attacks were vicious in nature. It appeared almost like ambushes more than methodical stalker killing. There were no careful slices, just savage stabbing to abdomen, chest, sometimes the face, usually the excision of genitals that were never recovered. The photos that go along with the paperwork bear out the writing on them, and you've never seen anything quite like it. You don't want to see anything like that again. You deal with violence on a weekly basis, if not daily, and not this kind of violence. There's a reason you didn't apply for that kind of role. The handwritten paperwork, and unlike the typewritten official paperwork that Mueller included, links the young men, some of whom were young soldiers. And this is what's most alarming to you, because these young soldiers, you would think that if a series of soldiers was going missing, that would cause a widespread scandal. These at least 4 of the young men were members of the National People's Army. One was in fact a member of the paramilitary arm of the Ministry for State Security that you work for. And that's very troubling. You've never heard anything about a member of your regiment being brutally murdered. Some of the bodies were found close to barracks. Some, however, were located throughout East Berlin. The handwritten notes go on to imply connections between some of these young men and several officers of the Guards Regiment, some of whom you still work with or work for. You recognize 5 or 6 names, and Mueller's notes regarding his suspicions of what they may have known and what they never confirmed to him. The last name that you find that he circled, left question marks around it, as one you don't know, down as Rudolf Hoffmann, relatively common name. You've never heard of it before, or at least you've never met a Rudolf Hoffmann. You don't think there's one in your regiment. Certainly where other individuals noted have rank, Mueller has stated it. But yeah, the entire file is deeply troubling.
Okay, so I have this file. I read it. I figure I'm not supposed to have this, so I don't. Destroy it.
Are you burning it?
Yes. And then I go to find the wife of my friend to see what happened to him. And I'm a little worried that someone might be after me already.
Paranoia sets in early. You make your way to Mueller's apartment. It's been a long time since you visited. And you buzz on the intercom. His name is, of course, still on a little panel, along with his wife's. Who is it?
It's Gunther.
Oh, Gunther, Gunther. Come up, come on up. The door unlocks.
Okay, I go up. Does she open the door?
She does.
I only just heard. I'm so sorry.
She gives you a tight hug. It's been so long since I last saw you.
I know. We've been very busy. Everything is upside down these days.
No doubt. I hear on the news. I heard about the demonstrations today. Were you out there?
Yes, actually, I just come back from that.
Something about student protests this time. Youth of today. That's the problem. They don't know how lucky they have it. And she turns around and carries on talking. I remember when I was young, youth would be so grateful for all the benefits they gain today, everything covered by the state. Back when I was young, families had to pay their own way. Please sit down. Would you like coffee?
Yes, thank you.
She seems untroubled, considering her husband's recent death. And certainly she's not wearing mourning black. Yeah, so I don't know. Sometimes I feel like those students need a firm clip around the ear or a truncheon waved in their face to.
Yeah, it's all the Western propaganda that gets here, and they promise them a lot of things that are not true.
You don't need to tell me that, Gunther.
By the way, how did it happen? How did he die?
I can't say I wasn't expecting it, she says, sitting down with your coffee, passes it over, drinks some herself. He was so low after he retired. He was low for many years up to his retirement, but never quite as bad. He entered a real black mood. I kept suggesting that we get away from Berlin for a while, see the world, maybe. And he kept putting it off, kept finding errands to run, people he wanted to meet before we went anywhere. He just got more and more, I don't want to say lazy, but there were times he wouldn't even get out of bed. I wondered if he had a chest cold or something like that, but he said it was all in his head. He just wasn't feeling the motivation anymore. That without the work, I suppose, nothing was driving him. I found it very difficult, but I've lived mostly by myself for the majority of time. He's worked in the police. A number of times he was out and about investigating things and not coming home for weeks on end. His laying in bed while I was doing work around the house, seeing my friends playing bridge and so on, didn't really make much of a difference to me. It was just a shame, It was just a shame. And then I came home 10 days ago now. And I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped through the door. Even when he was low, he liked to have the radio on. But there was no radio on, and I didn't think he would have gone out of the house. I went into the bathroom, and there he was. He had taken his gun and placed it against his head, and I guess that was it for him. Completely destroyed the sink. My sister said that She wished he had used a razor blade, because now we've got to order a new sink.
That's terrible. I'm so sorry.
It is terrible. Strange the things you focus on. You know, I knew he was suffering with money. I knew he was struggling a little. And part of me wondered whether he did this so that I could get access to his full pension and the rest. But you know, they've tied it all up now. When someone kills themselves, they have to do a full investigation. Was there secondary causes? Was there political reasons for his suicide? Or I know I'm going to be waiting a long time before I see a single mark of that money. But that's not the important thing. I know I've lost my husband of many, many years, and I don't think it's quite hit me yet that he's never going to come back. Did he say anything interesting to you when you last spoke?
Not much, just that he wanted to travel. He wanted to take you places, travel around. But yes, that he had some money problems.
I thought as much. He always was a little bit of a gambler. Loved going down to the betting shops, you know. Speaking of the insidious West. But I know it was a way he distracted himself. I think sometimes work got a little too much for him, but it's difficult for a man of his age to change his career, you know. Once he was locked in there, that was him set. I think he just didn't know how to get off the carousel until it came too late. And once he was off, he missed the turn of it.
Well, I'm sorry I have to go so early, but I am expected back, so I mustn't be late. But if you need anything, you know how to reach me.
Yes, of course. You know, there is something you could do. This sounds so silly. Well, following his death, I felt I needed to reach out to my sister a little, and I've got to go away and stay with her for a couple of weeks. I think it will be good for my head. I don't want to be in this apartment by myself. Not after this. Not for a while, anyway. Well, the man is coming with the new sink next week. And if you would be able to just pop in and just make sure he's not robbing the place, I would very much appreciate it. I can provide you with the date and time. I'm sure I won't interfere with your work.
Sure, no problem. I can do that.
Thank you so much.
Count on me.
You are a darling.
No problem.
She gives you another hug?
It's been nice to see you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. A week later, or meanwhile, over to Jonas. It appears fate is conspiring to join you both.
Indeed.
As your father's good word in the foreman's ear does get you on the next truck to Berlin with all the sinks and toilets, they hire local hands for doing some of the installations, but They don't like their drivers to just sit around doing nothing while they're waiting things to be unloaded. Often there are things to load up in Berlin and take back anyway. You'll be required to do some installations. But first, visiting your brother, or seeking out an underground boxing ring. What do you think Jonas would do his first time probably in Berlin? You've parked up the truck someplace safe. You have a city you could explore, or family you could meet. Reassuring, reliable surroundings. What would Jonas do at liberty?
Definitely go and meet my brother.
Excellent. You meet up with your brother, and I think did we record his name?
No, it's
No.
undefined as well.
Okay. Your brother's name is Tobias.
Tobias.
And remind the audience what Tobias is studying in Berlin.
Mechanical engineering.
So one step above your more, I guess, well, it's not unskilled labour, but certainly it's not the theory behind the labour. Tobias invites you to meet him on campus grounds. And seeing you for the first time in probably 6 months to a year, he is beaming to meet his younger brother again.
I hug my brother.
He hugs you back. Jonas, I'm so glad you could come. Let's walk around the campus. I have so much news to tell you, so much news. Wow, this city. Now that you're here, you are not going to want to leave.
Tell me everything. Tell me, I want to know everything.
He tells you stories of girlfriends. He tells you stories about drinking. He tells you stories about getting involved in student protests in the street, even when you don't really believe in the cause. It's just fun. It's a sense of community. It's a sense of youthful vigor that seems to be completely absent from Bautzen. Such an old town in comparison to Berlin, which even on this side of the wall is undergoing a youthful revolution. Despite all the appearances, he says, of dour young men in grey and brown, there are punks here.
What?
Yes. Yeah, there are punks here. Just because these subcultures are from the other side doesn't mean people aren't getting records smuggled over, or it's quite something.
Do you have any of these cigarettes you told me about?
Well, the ones that don't taste like, yeah. No, I don't have any of the cigarettes, but I do know someone who does. I have. There is so much to show you. How long are you here for?
I can only be here for the day. I have to do some installations for some people.
You can only be here for a day.
Yeah.
You should have come. You should have arranged to stay here for a week at least. Berlin is a big city, my little brother, and there is so much for a boy from a town like ours to experience here. So you've got a day. What do you want to do in a day, or do you want me to be the guide?
Whatever you think. Just let's lead on.
Your brother takes you on a not so much a hedonistic journey as an eye-opening one for you. As much as you have competed on the boxing circuit, and so that's allowed you to experience some things that many people wouldn't, he shows you a couple of very popular bars, one of which has a dancer on a stage in the cabaret style. It's not too risque, but it's certainly unlike anything from Bautzen. Lots of clapping young men and young women. There's a genuine verve of excitement about this place. He meets up with his friend, haggles a little, gets one of these little silver wallets of cigarettes. These, he says, are French.
Wow.
He tucks a few cigarettes in your front pocket. Save them for a special occasion. Now, have one now, it is a special occasion.
I'm gonna light one right now.
He rather obnoxiously wafts his nose over it. It is beautiful, isn't it, compared to the thick tar that we usually have to smoke.
Yeah.
What else can I show you? So do you have a girlfriend yet?
Oh man, I was trying with Franziska, but she doesn't like it.
Well, you can forget Franziska for tonight. You're here for one day, that means you're here for one night as well. If you're here for the night, I can introduce you to a young lady. She's very, very strong. And she will redefine what you think of women and what you think is available in our half of Germany.
I don't get it. Is she blonde?
Not tonight, as far as I know. But she'll show you things. And she owes me a favor. And she will like you. It's, nothing under duress. She'll like you, and she likes to do favors.
Great, that's great. Listen, I think I have to go do the installation, but what if I meet you somewhere afterwards?
Yeah. We'll meet back here. In this bar. At 9 p.m?
Yeah, that's fine. I think I'll probably make it.
I'll have Anna with me. Anna's the young lady. I'll introduce the two of you. You can get to know each other. Maybe you'll be the one who makes her stop her wicked ways and fall in love. But I hope not, because Anna's very popular around here.
Let's see.
You part ways with your brother and make your way to do some of the installation jobs. It takes you around East Berlin, and to be honest, you've got it down to a fine art now. You can head in, remove the current faucet or whatever the fitting is, fix a new one, all within the space of around 20 minutes. To be honest, the most amount of time is often taken lugging one heavy piece of ceramic from an upper floor of an apartment down to a bottom one, because so many of the elevators in these apartment blocks just don't work. If anything, that's where you've probably built the majority of your strength in your arms and thighs. It's going up and down stairs constantly, carrying sinks and toilets by yourself. So it is that you find yourself calling at the household of a Müller family.
Yeah.
You press the buzzer, and Gunther, in the apartment of former apartment of Hans Müller, now just Claudia Müller, hears the buzz.